both of them. So my guess is on this one here isn't necessarily that they're going to say the ins and outs. What they're going to say is every year they have an unfunded amount based on their calculations, and then based on qualifying payroll, that's what I'm hearing, that they're going to be addressing it. That's how they're going to be addressing it between the different school districts. So the larger ones will, of course, get the larger piece of the pie. But even with that, you've got roughly a $19 million budget, so you're still going to get a fairly substantial amount. And I call it the devil's in the details as it relates to this, because I just don't know what it's going to be looking like. But the unfunded status is quite high.
I just want to say for everybody here in the community that when we talk about this being an unfunded pension liability, it's not something that was created by our school district to not fund retirement properly. It comes from the state level and what plans they were involved in and what was contributed over time. Now is at the point where it's not enough. So they're going to come back to us in another school year and possibly ask for more out of us to fund this unfunded liability at the state level.
Let me add to it even more too, just so you know. What happens is you contribute to the state of Michigan based on a percentage that they establish for you every year, okay? Based on every dollar that's being paid to either a teacher or somebody within the school district. Roughly, if you're looking at the average person that's been here right now, you're looking at roughly 24 to 25%. So every dollar you're looking at 24 to 25 cents on a dollar, okay? So with that in mind, like I said, I have a little history that years ago, that percentage was probably in the neighborhood of close to maybe around 10%. But because of retirements, because of the shrinking population of the number of teachers that are actually out here, because of the number of people that are actually in the system, that percentage has grown to, it got it roughly over, I guess, close to 27% at one time, and now it's back down to roughly between 24 to 25. So, and then depending on if you're a new teacher or not, that also could be even a little lower than that, but it's also depending on your benefits.
Didn't the state raid that fund back in Mr. Engler's day? It seemed to be well funded at one time.
I'll say it a different way. They changed their funding, and what they did was they decided they wanted to do a pay-as-you-go as opposed to do a pre-funding. So what they did was they reduced down the funding, and backed it back off, and that maybe was part of those lower percentages for a while. Then all of a sudden, more people got in the system, and then the pool of dollars was not as much in that plan, for investments in that. So yes, it did happen during the Engler administration.
Do they have a hands-off approach now to this fund, or is it still something they can dip into? Because I'd heard that our current governor dipped into it for some money to fund something.
I'm not aware of that.
I think part of it is that, like you said, they went from a pre-funding to pay-as-you-go. I know it was 3 years ago or so, they were talking that the pension charge was going to go over 30%. They reduced it down, and that's part of the pay-as-you-go philosophy, I am assuming. And the other thing is, our present governor is advocated privatization in a lot of public people that were paying into this pension fund. You haven't shrunk the retiree base, but you've dramatically shrunk the paying in side of it. And I think that hasn't that attributed to a lot of this shortfall on the funding of it?
You're hitting on that is probably one of the key ones, because in essence, if you have less people that are paying in based on a certain percentage, or certain school districts pay on a lesser dollar amount than what's being paid in. If you remember I'm going to jump. Remember when we talked about the current year expenditures were inflated by about a couple $100,000? That's their way of charging or funding it into the school districts, or actually into the system, by getting it in that way. So they had additional funds in the current year, and I don't know the exact amount statewide, but each one of our school districts that were part of the system received a portion of it, but they only received it for a 10-day period before they had to pay it over to the state retirement board. So that's also happening in this current year too as well. So there's additional dollar amounts that are actually passing through that are not really any, quote, your required dollar amounts, but they're passing it through to your district.